Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Hello, Vaishnavas, devotees, spiritualists, transcendentalists everywhere. Really fun and impactful little verse cluster we're going to read today. Some synchronicity I'm going to talk about, which you may have noticed in the thumbnail for this live stream. We're going to read chapter 9, verse 16 through 19. You're welcome to join me or not, or just fast forward through a few mantras I will say to honor and invoke the Supreme. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Let us first read this literal translation for these verses in H.D. Goswami's Bhagavad Gita. Here it goes. I am the right, R-I-T-E, the offering and the benediction. I alone, the healing herb, the mantra, the clarified butter, and the oblation. I am the father, mother, creator, and grandfather of this world. I am the knowable, the purifier, and the sacred vibration Om. Indeed, I am the Rig, Sama, and Yajur Veda. I am the way, sustainer, Lord, witness, dwelling, and shelter, the kind friend, origin, dissolution, support, receptacle, and unperishing seed. It is I who provide warmth and who restrain and release rain. I alone am immortality, O Arjuna, as well as death, being, and non-being. With that, we're going to talk about the synchronicity. My new ring, Om, I ordered this at least 2 weeks ago. No, a month ago at this point, before I got injured. So, and then yesterday I went to pick it up, and the jewelers, this is their first time seeing me with my leg all crippled. I walked in with a crutch. But anyway, it was so funny. I was preparing for this live stream yesterday. I didn't really have time to do it yesterday, but I did reading the verses, taking the notes before going downtown to pick up this ring. And in, what is it, maybe 17 or 18, Krishna literally says, I am Om. I am this word Om. So, I wasn't thinking about that when I ordered this ring. I just thought, oh, this is the only like Hindu one available. And I just wanted something symbolic on the ring. This, in fact, it's mostly a tribute to Prabhupada, who said that pure gold and precious metals is real wealth, whereas, fiat currency and a lot of the other things like an IRA, investment accounts, these sorts of things are actually fake money. They're not real money. They don't count as real wealth. But having gold, having land, cows, animals, owning a business, these sorts of things are actual wealth. And I'm able to save money and invest in some wealth, so I've been buying gold. And sure enough, the day I came to pick up my Om ring, which is Krishna himself, I read the same exact verse in the Gita, totally unplanned, by me. So yeah, I hope that picture came out good on the thumbnail. It doesn't look good at all on my computer. It looks really low grain and highly compressed. I know my camera's good, so I think it's my Google Photos account that's taking down the resolution quite a bit. Yeah, I should go check that out after this. Anyway, let us read those same verses and purports in Prabhupada's Gita now. 16. But it is I who am the ritual, the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. Not much different from H.D. Goswami's translation. A few key differences, but essentially the same, of course, and all the same things are mentioned. And very short purport for all 4 of these verses. Very short purport. Only one of them has 2 paragraphs, and the second paragraph for verse 19 is 1 sentence. And I personally, when I read these verses by myself, I get a little, I get energized. It's not really, I wouldn't call it being emotional or, I'm not even sure if it's a bhakti related thing, but I get pumped up. Kind of like hearing about, like, if one of my favorite sports teams is winning or something. That's what it feels like for me reading these verses. I have trouble reading the purports because the verse itself is so potent. I'm just like, whoa, more please. And maybe it's a similar thing with Prabhupada. Maybe he's deliberately making these purports of these particular verses shorter so that more attention the reader will give to the verse itself, and especially reading it as a cluster, which does seem to be Krishna's design in this text or dialogue, really. This is actually a transcription, technically speaking. This is a dialogue between 2 people, a podcast, if you will, that was transcribed on paper. So in that sense, it's a text, but it's not. I mean, in terms of Krishna, yeah, you can say it's planned and designed and orchestrated millions of years in advance and yada, yada. But in reality, it was a dialogue. It was just 2 people talking on a battlefield, and then it was transcribed. And we are reading and chanting and listening and remembering through the transcription. But it just so happens that this dialogue has the most advanced and sublime philosophy ever. So you can treat it as a hardcore textbook and it will never let you down. One of the many reasons I'm doing these live streams. So, and another thing is that verse 16, the first verse of this cluster, is a massive leap from verse 15, from the conclusion of the previous cluster. Krishna just goes right into it, like, bam, this is me, here I come. This whole cluster is just very magnanimous. It's a huge flex, basically. A magnanimous flex, not an arrogant flex, not a cocky flex, a magnanimous flex. Magnanimity is a virtue, and it's a hard virtue for a lot of people to understand, but even if you fully understand it and appreciate it, as I do, to be honest, maybe not fully, but I understand it enough, there's still at some times you're just going to feel, it'll on the outside often be perceived as that magnanimous person is being arrogant, but they're not actually being arrogant. It's just part of the aesthetic perception of magnanimity. There will be some arrogance in it. Kind of in the same way that if you see someone being really generous, you assume that they're rich, but they might not be. They might be actually really broke or in debt or something. which is quite common among like gamblers and alcoholics, especially alcoholics. I feel like they're actually quite kind and generous, and they want to always share with others. And but they're also often not rich. um, but it may seem that way when you see them buying drinks for everyone. But appearances can be deceptive. So, in the last verse before this, Krishna talked about those who worship the impersonal Supreme Lord, those who are following knowledge, looking for knowledge, and they worship Krishna impersonally. And now in this verse 16, Krishna is saying, don't worry about those ding-dongs. Worship my impersonal form. Just hear of how wrong they are. Just try to feel of how utterly clueless they are. He's really just like, here it comes. And once again, yet the purport is so small. One paragraph, less than half a page. And I'm just going to read the second half of this paragraph, where starting with fire. The first part, like about oblations and these things, is just a little bit obvious, to be honest. Skipping it. Here we go. Quote, the fire is also Krishna because fire is one of the 5 material elements and is therefore claimed as the separated energy of Krishna. In other words, the Vedic sacrifices recommended in the Karmakanda division of the Vedas are in total also Krishna. Or, in other words, those who are engaged in rendering devotional service unto Krishna are to be understood to have performed all the sacrifices recommended in the Vedas, unquote. So this is a perfect and complete description and purport for this verse. And it's such a useful purport because it really shows that the magnanimity in Krishna, and it's not woo-woo, like it's not rhetoric. Krishna's not saying these things to be cute and to sound cool. He's just telling the truth in a poetic, eloquent, and powerful way as usual, but it's actually just the literal truth of what's happening. It's just simply true. Krishna is fire. Anywhere there is fire, there is Krishna. The entire material world, but especially the material elements we learned before, that is the expanded impersonal energy of Krishna. And so, yeah, that means it is Krishna. It's just not, we're going to go more and more personal into Krishna, but just because you're dealing with an impersonal form or expansion or whatever, that's still part of Krishna. So when he says, I am the fire, he's not, saying, no, yeah, but remember, I'm still there. All right, on to 17. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandfather. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, Sama, and Yajur Vedas. Vedas is in brackets, kind of parentheses here, because in the Sanskrit, the last line of the verse is simply Rig, Sama, Yajur, Avacha, which just literally certainly means, and certainly Rig, Sama, Yajur. But yeah, Prabhupada should be putting, for his clueless readers like me when I first read this, Vedas in parentheses here, because, even if you just give a literal translation for those 3 words, Rik, Sama, and Yajur, which you could, that's obviously not what Krishna is saying. Sama is a common term. Samadhi, you see that word everywhere. And it means a bunch of different things. And when all 3, there's only 4 Vedas, 3 or 4. And so when you see all 3 right next to each other, it's like, that's obvious Krishna is talking about the Vedas. So the thing I don't understand here is why Krishna says he is three of the four, but why not the fourth? So, and I Googled it a little bit. And the first part of the purport is a lot like what we read in the last purport, where Prabhupada explains um, what Krishna is doing. Again, it's just a literal logical proof showing coherence and correspondence to what he's said before. He's not actually saying anything new here. Um, and if you've been reading and following along and not cheating and not lying to yourself and just kind of nodding your head but like really believing something else, if you're actually participating sincerely, and not just sincerely, but there's other things that kind of need to be there too. Humbly, sure, but I feel like there must be a little curiosity or inquisitiveness, uh, introspection. I get, no, where I'm almost there. Reflection. So, if there are some people who can read the scriptures and immediately accept it and take it into their heart, and that's great, but they don't reflect on it. They don't compare it to other things and try to see it in the world around them and start basically playing with it as if it really is theirs. Of course, there's a good reason why those people do that is because they're probably more pure than me. But at the same time, because it is dangerous if you start playing with Shastra as if it's like a toy or something, then you might start to think, oh, it's beneath you. And that's why humor is dangerous at advanced levels of spirituality, because humor has this natural tendency to demean the thing that it's basically making fun of. But at the same time, Prabhupada literally told us in the beginning of the Gita, proper religion must have faith and rationality. So there must be some rational cognition, activity, mental activity that's going on while you're studying, reading, listening, chanting, remembering this Bhagavad Gita. There must be something there on your part. But there also must be the faith must be there. When Krishna and Prabhupada simply say, this is the truth, this is the absolute truth, you will simply listen and accept it as truth. You have to actually do that too. You can't just only do the rational thing and just think you can figure your way out into bhakti or faith, or you can't get it. It doesn't work like that. At some point you have to surrender and actually just doesn't mean surrender your rationality, but just like faith. The faith has to be there. And then after that faith, it's really good to start with faith. And then after that, you apply rationality to it. Think of it as just giving the benefit of the doubt to the person you're associating with. In this case, the writer, transcriber, creator, speaker of this text. Just imagine you're just like hanging out, talking to Krishna or anyone else, and they say something, whoa, little jarring, little amazing, little unbelievable. What do you do if it's a really good friend? Do you just say, screw you, man, I don't believe you? No, you say it's the exact opposite. You begin by saying, at least to yourself, oh, okay, yep, I accept that. And then you ask them, well, but what did you mean by that? Or, but how does that, correspond to this other thing you said? I think there's a contradiction there. That's totally fine. It's very actually easy to do that respectfully, so long as you have done the faith part first properly. Yeah. So in the purport, Prabhupada talks about the living entities who are Krishna's marginal energy, but sometimes they appear as our father, mother, whatever, but they are parts and parcels of Krishna. They are nothing but Krishna. And all the Vedas aim only toward Krishna. Whoa. This is getting really holographic and meta here. That subject matter of the Vedas, which helps us purify our constitutional position, is especially Krishna. Similarly, the living entity who is inquisitive to understand all Vedic principles is also part and parcel of Krishna, and as such is also Krishna. So we are Krishna trying to learn Krishna. Krishna trying to learn about Krishna. And we have come here specifically in this impure form to taste the wonder, the unbelievable, unparalleled, fantastic craziness of going back home where we came from and realizing how we came here in the first, and then going back, and then, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. At the end, Prabhupada does mention the Atharva Veda, the fourth Veda, and that Omkara, the word Om, is all throughout the hymns of the Vedas. So I go, what is Atharva Veda anyway? I Googled it. It says it deals with some magic, certain magic rituals, marriage, funeral rites, and many believe it's the origin of Ayurveda. But I think I remember it also said many verses in the Atharva Veda come from the Rig Veda. So just speculating here why Krishna did not also mention Atharva. One reason could be that at that time, 5,000 years ago, there wasn't a fourth Veda. Meaning those hymns were probably there, but it may have actually been part of the Rig Veda. And then sometime later, it was kind of separated into a fourth Veda. As I say that out loud, it does sound familiar, like I actually heard that before. Really don't know. Also, it's really not practical. It doesn't really matter that much. But there is another reason, which is always at play here, and this is why I talk about verse clusters and this cluster compared to that cluster, is there are rules to Sanskrit. And every verse has 4 lines with a certain number of syllables, and there's a meter and rhythm to every single line and verse. And I believe, basically every line must have a certain exact number of syllables. Maybe it's not the same for every single line, but it's like if the first line has 10 syllables, then the third line should have 10 syllables. It has to match. It all has to be geometrically, mathematically symmetrical and sound. Sound. Of course, it should be sound. It is sound, so it should be sound. It's like, come on, guys. We've gone this far into La La Land that we don't even know what sound is. So if Krishna were to mention all 4 Vedas, Atharva, that's 3 extra syllables. It just wouldn't work. But let's count it out to make sure. It's typically the second and fourth lines that correspond. So mata, tahata, pita, maha, maybe ha. So 8. And then rig, sama, yajur, ava, cha. Also 8 syllables. Let me do that one. Rig, sama, yajur, ava, cha. 8 syllables both times. So, and if you add Atarva, you can't, that's a whole 3 out of 8. That's a huge percentage increase in the number of syllables in that line. It's simply not possible. There's no way you can fit. And Atarva is the only one that's not 1 or 2 syllables. All the other ones are only 1 or 2 syllables. That one's 3 syllables. That may even be the biggest reason Krishna did not mention the Atharva Veda. It also may be that it is the least important Veda of the 3 Vedas. Based on my Googling of it, I think that's actually true as well. Like marriage, funerals, Ayurveda, that's all mundane. Just like Varnashram Dharma, it's entirely mundane by itself in a vacuum. If you take Krishna out of that, which you can do and still have a very effective, excellent society and culture, that's basically what I would call Confucianism, which is very successful. It's my favorite culture in the world, basically. And it's been that way for centuries, thousands of years, but they ain't got no Krishna. So as far as Krishna is concerned and what's happening in the Bhagavad Gita, it's like, you got nothing. That ain't me. I'm Rig Samayajra. I ain't only a Tarva, and I ain't even especially a Tarva. I'm only that to a minor degree, and it's so minor I ain't even going to say it in my verse, in my mantra. I think that's good for now. 18, I'm the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place, and the eternal seed. When I was reading this, I liked playing around with the word suhrt, which means most intimate friend. A lot of these Sanskrit words, and in other languages too, I've realized that the word for and in Italian, is supernatural. Like as you're thinking of the next thing to say, a lot of people, not just Italians, Israelis, like a lot of people all over the world, naturally start going, Well, guess what? That's literally the word for and in Italian. Onomatopoeia, we call it. So dumb in English. Suhurt. So as I say it, it kind of feels like I'm like reaching out to my friend. Suhurt. Hurt means heart. So it could literally mean something like you are in my heart or something. I don't know. Hurt does mean heart for sure. Hurt Dayananda, bliss in the heart. Definitely means heart. Su, I'm not sure what that prefix su means. We've read it in many other words. I would love to know though. Oh boy. And also worth noting, the word translated as master is Prabhu, which in the literal translation, Prabhupada says means Lord with a capital L. But then in the English translation, he just says the master, not even a capital M. Very interesting, very significant. Another reason why you don't need any other translation but this one. Just that alone, if you just sit with it for a while and investigate it enough, that's everything is there. This one has the longest purport, but also the shortest notes that I put in for this verse. Oh, the main thing I wrote is that I couldn't even read through the purport. When I was taking the notes yesterday, I could barely even look at the page. I was buzzing. I was just buzzing so much Shakti coursing throughout all my meridians. What jumps out of my head is not at my head, with my eyes looking at the purport is Chandraloka, Suryaloka, all these planets where many yogis can reach. Prabhupada's talking about. But then these planets, they're also Krishna. And even if you do some austerities and you get to one of these planets, that's still just a stepping stone along the path to Krishna. So what does Prabhupada say? Of course, quote, one should directly approach Krishna, for that will save time and energy, unquote. Perfect. Classic Asian wisdom, literal, logical, true, practical. For example, and just in case if you don't get it, which is true for a lot of us, for example, if there's a possibility of going to the top of a building by the help of an elevator, why should one go by the staircase step by step? It's a good point. We do see that sometimes, right? Every time I go to the subway, there's always one person who is walking the stairs instead of the escalator. And there are a few reasons for that. It's interesting. Whenever we have to take protection, we should know that our protection must be a living force. Thus, Krishna is the supreme living entity. Since Krishna is the source of our generation, or the Supreme Father, no one can be a better friend than Krishna, nor can anyone be a better well-wisher. And Krishna is the original source of creation, the ultimate rest after annihilation. Krishna is therefore the eternal cause of all causes. Prabhupada is probably referring to Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes. 19. O Arjuna, I control heat, the rain, and the drought. I am immortality. And I am also death personified. Both being and non-being are in me. I really like the Sanskrit words in this verse. Immortality is amritam. 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 Whew. These are hard words to say sometimes, right? Sat, asat, chaham. So in the verse, it's all blended together, so it's hard to see which words are actually how it makes up. So in the verse, it says sat asakcham, sat asakchaham, Arjuna. But if you do word by word, it's sat asat cha aham, which means being and non-being, I am. Being and non-being, I am. Which also, I think I may have wrote this in my notes, it also kind of indicates that Krishna is also beyond being and non-being. By being both, he is also by necessity, by definition, already beyond that, both of those. Because he is both of them together, he is already by his nature beyond that duality, or apparent duality, we could say. And so this verse is perfect. It's the perfect summary for this verse cluster, especially that last line. All of the great things that exist, we could call thought. And all of the negations and horrible things and annihilation of the whole universe is asa. And Krishna says, that's me. I am all that is and all that is not. So, and together, he is the transcendence of that polarity. And then in the middle of the first paragraph, Prabhupada writes something interesting. The energy which sustains us by prolonging the duration of our life is Krishna, and Krishna meets us at the end as death. By analyzing all these different energies of Krishna, one can ascertain that for Krishna, there is no distinction between matter and spirit. Or, in other words, he is both matter and spirit. In the advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, one does not therefore make such distinctions. He sees Krishna only in everything. Those few lines, to me, are much better understood in reverse. It's just so kind of self-evident to me that a advanced devotee sees Krishna in everything, and then once you accept that someone sees Krishna in everything, then it's easier to see how matter and spirit are, distinctions you don't maybe have time for or don't matter, and the same is true for all the different energies of Krishna, and so on. But reading it as it is, how Prabhupada wrote it, it's hard. And that could be why Prabhupada writes, one can ascertain that. He's admitting that you have to really study to figure this out. And also, it's not just that there's no distinction between matter and spirit, but it's that Prabhupada says, for Krishna, there is no distinction between matter and spirit. And that's really hard to get to that thinking like that. It's a good example of a perhaps not humble way of thinking as you associate with Krishna through his Shastra. Trying to think a bit from his perspective, why he's writing it for you, and how he sees what's going on. But then again, it's totally natural. If you're actually taking it seriously, that Krishna is actually a person, then you will treat him like a person. This is what we do. This is what we all do all the time. Every time you talk with anyone, stranger, acquaintance, coworker, friend, anyone. Oh, why did he say that to me? What did he really mean? Or, that's just people. It's just how we are. And as with anything else, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, a decent way and indecent way, and so on. But I mean, how many of us are having, I guess what I would call it, purely non-social, non-psychological conversations with others, where it's 100% only about the content, and you refuse to ever put 1% of energy into thinking what the other person may be thinking or feeling. You just refuse to do that at all. No one does that. We always try to empathize, sympathize and empathize with the person we're talking to. And that seems to be actually a necessity in the life of a devotee of the personal Lord. Otherwise, you're not a devotee of the personal Lord. If you're not treating him like a person, then you're not a devotee of the personal Lord. You're still a devotee of the impersonal Lord, or not a devotee at all. Right? What am I missing here? And so, once again, this short, really short purport technically has 2 paragraphs. The second one is just 1 sentence, which I'll just read. It's a long sentence, but I'll just read the whole thing. Since Krishna is both matter and spirit, the gigantic universal form comprising all material manifestations is also Krishna, and his pastimes in Vrindavan as two-handed Shyama Sundar, playing on a flute, are those of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it seems, I think Prabhupada is making a clear distinction here between, quote, Krishna, unquote, in the general sense, and compared to or contrasted with Krishna and Vrindavan, the most personal, intimate in that sense, two arms, playing flute, whatever, who Prabhupada labels as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, capital S, capital P, capital G. They're both Krishna, but Prabhupada, I think it is obviously intentionally making a distinction between Krishna and the Supreme Personality of Krishna, basically, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Godhead is such an interesting word. I wonder if that comes from Sanskrit. There's a word that literally has it's like Deva head or something like that. Bhagavan head, or I don't know. Of course, head just means the top of something, but it also means where the face is. There's that personal aspect to it. It's so perfect. It's such a perfect English term for the highest conception of God. You cannot. I've never found, as H.D. Goswami said, the same is true for me. Until you show me something better, until you show me some other religion or some other theology or something that's better than this, I have to treat this like it's the best there is, because that's what it claims, and it does it coherently and concisely and so on. It's not like supreme means the most. Personality means it's a person. And Godhead means the head of God, not just God, but the head of God, the commanding aspect of all other aspects of God, and the most personal aspect of that, and the most supreme aspect of that personal aspect. What could possibly be more powerful, more commanding, more worthy of respect and worship, admiration, love, not relatable, because we're not kings of everything, but that's it. That's Bhagavan by Bhaktivedanta Swami. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here too. Thank you, Mr. Om, Sri Krishna. I had a fun time with you today. See y'all next time. Haribol. Jai Shri Prabhupada, Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Vaishnavas. Vaishnavis have